On August 9th, 2021, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released the first part of their sixth assessment of the climate crisis. Years in the making, the report once again warned the world of our dire circumstances.
Climate change is now rapid, widespread, and intensifying.
The alarm bells are deafening.
It is unequivocal.
Within the nearly 4,000-page breakdown of the physical science driving climate chaos lies a particularly disturbing section, one that illuminates just what's at stake if we continue on the path of unhindered extraction and emissions. This is the story of tipping points, what they are, when they will happen, and what actions we can take now to stop drastic domino effects in the future. This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream, which now comes with Nebula for free when you sign up using the link in the description. Imagine you're playing Jenga. You and your friends are slowly taking apart the tower brick by brick until suddenly one of you pulls out a wooden block and the whole tower collapses. This is a tipping point in a nutshell. As our global capitalist system pulls more and more wooden blocks, which on the global scale represent carbon emissions or deforestation, the physical states of ocean currents, glaciers, and whole forests become unstable. So with one small push, or the removal of one more block, whole glacial or rainforest systems can cascade into a different state, often with no ability to return back to normal. The climate crisis is now driving us headlong past these precipices. Carbon Brief, the award-winning science explainer website, identified 9 of the biggest possible tipping points around the world that, if triggered, could create abrupt and irreversible change. These tipping points look like everything from irreversible coral reef die-offs to catastrophic shifts in West African and Indian monsoons, or even the collapse of the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, which includes the Gulf Stream. And we all know what happens when the Gulf Stream collapses. In short, once these systems have barreled past their tipping points, there's very little chance of reverting back to the environments humanity has grown accustomed to. So with this in mind, let's take a look at 2 of the most consequential tipping points we face in the coming decades of the climate crisis. The Amazon rainforest, with its abundance of flora and fauna, was once the lungs of the world, sucking in deep breaths of carbon dioxide and sequestering it into its wide trunks. The Amazon absorbed 5 to 10% of human-caused CO2 emissions per year. But in 2021, that's no longer the case for the southeastern section of the rainforest. According to a recent study, some areas of the massive rainforest located in Brazil have now become a net source of carbon dioxide emissions, emitting as much as 1 billion metric tons of carbon per year. This is just a taste of what a wholesale dieback of the Amazon could mean. And if left unchecked, the capitalist exploitation that got us into this mess will only accelerate the destabilization of the Amazon. But the forces that could push us into a large-scale forest die-off are complex. Ultimately, though, they boil down to increased drought and fires driven by climate change and deforestation. Together, these two could fragment and degrade the Amazon to such a state that it would no longer support itself and thus transition into an ecosystem much more like a savanna than a rainforest. And according to one study, this process of savannification could happen in just a 50-year time frame. The current research, however, reveals that there is some time before we reach this dieback tipping point. If deforestation weren't an issue, 3 degrees Celsius of warming could be enough to tip towards an Amazonian dieback, with 4 degrees Celsius being much more realistic. The problem is that extensive deforestation driven by soybean farming for livestock and slash and burn clearing for cattle pasture is further destabilizing the Amazon. Continued deforestation means an accelerated pace towards irreversible large-scale Amazonian transformation. And the Amazon's rapid transition from rainforest to savanna not only spells disaster for its rich biodiversity, but it also means a lot of the carbon that the Amazon has captured over the years will release into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide, potentially pushing us deeper into climate chaos. But there is still hope. As Professor Richard Betts puts it,
if deforestation is a more direct human action, we have a more immediate chance of stopping it by holding back on deforestation.
So while deforestation is speeding us along to a tipping point, it also represents a very tangible intervention that, if halted, could give us ample time to prevent catastrophic dieback. But even if we act quickly to prevent the dying of the Amazon, there's another ominous tipping point on the horizon that could lock in a hotter world for centuries to come. The Arctic is warming rapidly. Temperatures there have been increasing almost twice as fast as the global average. And just this summer, a Siberian town within the Arctic Circle experienced a sweltering 118 degrees Fahrenheit or 47.8 degrees Celsius on the ground. The Arctic is quite literally on fire. For a region that's usually supposed to be cold most of the year, this spells disaster, especially for the layers of permafrost that coat the Arctic. Permafrost is any ground that stays frozen for more than 2 years straight. In most cases, especially if you dig down underneath the topsoil that melts and refreezes every year, you'll find permafrost that has been in a frozen state for thousands of years. It's essentially the deep freezer of the world and covers almost a quarter of the land area of the northern hemisphere. It holds organic remains of plants, animals, and microbes in a state of frozen stasis. Unable to properly decompose, this organic matter has built up over hundreds of thousands of years. Some scientists have estimated that as much as 1.6 trillion metric tons of carbon, or the equivalent of double the amount of carbon dioxide now in our atmosphere, is currently trapped in permafrost. This means that if a substantial amount of permafrost begins to thaw and the organic matter within it decomposes, global emissions could quickly accelerate. A 2019 report from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the US states that this thawing could be releasing an estimated 300 to 600 million tons of net carbon per year to the atmosphere. But what makes the melting of the permafrost so daunting is that once it thaws and microbes start breaking down the organic matter and releasing methane and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, there's no going back. You can't just refreeze thawed organic matter. In much the same way you wouldn't put partially decomposed raw chicken back into the freezer to make it more edible. Unlike other tipping points, however, researchers are observing that permafrost doesn't drive itself or cascade quickly on a large scale. Most likely, it will thaw at a steady pace with occasional regional collapse and quick declines. This means that if we are able to slow and mitigate climate change, we could potentially slow down or stop large-scale permafrost melt, ultimately keeping billions, if not trillions, of carbon in the ground. But to do that, we need a complete political, economic, and cultural transformation on an unprecedented scale. We are barreling towards the edge of countless tipping points, from the rapid melt of the Greenland ice sheet to the disintegration of the West Antarctic ice sheet. If we tip over the edge, there's very little possibility of returning to our current state, which means that prevention is essential. We need to slam on the brakes right now. We need to treat the climate crisis like it really is. A crisis. Tipping points show us that there are very real consequences if we continue on our current course. But they also show us that taking transformational action right now is not a radical act, it's a necessary one. Milquetoast emission cuts and lukewarm net zero goals from multinationals will not stop us from tipping over the edge. These schemes are akin to trying to stop a truck with a pebble. So we need to address the root cause of the climate crisis in order to avoid these potential cascading catastrophes. Global capitalism must end. I've made a whole video on why capitalism is not only not the answer to the climate crisis, but also the main driver of it. In short, for the last 50 years, we've known of the specter of climate change, and global capitalism has failed to achieve any large-scale emissions reductions needed to stop a warming world. New paradigms, then, are essential. Ideas and movements like eco-socialism, indigenous sovereignty, solar punk, and a Red New Deal all have the potential to not only stop climate change, but to build a flourishing world. A world wherein tipping points are taken seriously and the vast resources and knowledge of our communities are mobilized to prevent them. The dieback of the Amazon and permafrost melt are not the only tipping points we're at risk of triggering. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to cover all of them in this video, but I actually did write a little section all about the melting of the Greenland ice sheet, but it got cut for time to appease the YouTube algorithm. So I've uploaded that section as an extended edition of this video on the streaming platform my creator friends and I built called Nebula. The bonus content replaces this ad because there aren't any ads on Nebula. And you'll not only see a lot of extended editions, exclusive content, and ad-free videos over on Nebula from me, but also from channels like Second Thought and Polymatter. Nebula allows viewers to support creators directly so they don't have to worry about the pesky YouTube algorithm. Nebula is awesome, but it's now made even better with our partnership with CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream is the go-to streaming platform for thousands of top-tier documentaries, like the documentary Earth's Survival, which looks at how the climate crisis is driving us towards various tipping points like the melting of the permafrost. And because CuriosityStream loves supporting educational creators, we worked out a deal where if you sign up with the link below, not only do you get access to CuriosityStream, but you'll also get Nebula for free. And this isn't a trial. You'll have Nebula as long as you're a CuriosityStream member. What's even better is that CuriosityStream is offering a special deal for my viewers, 26% off their annual plan. That's a little over $1 a month for both CuriosityStream and Nebula. By signing up, you'll not only directly support Our Changing Climate, but you'll also gain access to thousands of documentaries and exclusive videos from your favorite creators. So if you want to support both Our Changing Climate and hundreds of other educational content creators, go to curiositystream.com/OCC or click the link in the description and sign up for CuriosityStream and Nebula for just $14.79 per year. That's 26% off. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If you've already signed up for CuriosityStream, you can also support me by becoming an Our Changing Climate patron. Just pledging $1 a month gives me the financial stability I need to keep making more videos like this. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.